Oh, hi, and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 64. I'm Tristan Jutra.
I'm William Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams.
Hot damn, we nailed it. It only took us 64 episodes, and I'm kicking myself because I forgot to wear my Commodore t-shirt to celebrate. I was thinking about it earlier.
From a comedy perspective, that would have been a 64-bit.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
It's very Altavec. Was that 128-bit? So 90s. No one will understand what that means.
No, stop.
You can learn more about our nonsense at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv, and on YouTube, search for my name and find our Momentous playlists there. It's three of us this week, not just two. The great return of the stalwart Will Silver. Will, it's great to have you back. How are things going on the home front?
Things have been better, but I'm glad to be here. And I'm actually really psyched to be back and chatting with my buds about the things we love. So
it looks like you're psyched about Vancouver Whitecaps today as well, given by your hat and the background.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. It was the first cap I picked up because
are we getting a cut of that action? Because that's pretty hardcore product placement there.
I don't know. They've been pretty horrible recently. I don't think they're getting a lot of money at the gate, so I'm not
Momentous
sure.
Live, not brought to you by MLS or the Vancouver
not
Whitecaps.
Brought to you by MLS.
Actually, the Vancouver Whitecaps brought to you by Momentous Live. We're sponsored.
Yeah, very soon. Very soon.
Bit of a charity case. We're doing what we can.
Yeah.
And Gray, you settled even more than last week in your new digs. Things are going well there.
Yeah. We had the big checklist of all the things we had to get done. All the heavy things that had to be carried around. And so we're no longer living amongst cardboard boxes, which is fantastic. The place is looking. I'm saying Ray's put up all the art. This looks like home. It looks like home. It looks and feels like home. So I'm happy.
Awesome.
Excellent. What's the of home? Not homemade doesn't sound right, but of the personal art collection, how much is done by her and how much is done by you? Because I know she's an artist, and you.
Actually, there's a couple of my photographs up on the wall. She's got a couple of really great focal pieces, and then there's some art from friends and people we haven't seen in a very long time. And it's quite nice. There's a couple of IKEA pieces, the San Francisco hill shot that everybody had back in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. I've got one of those still from university, so that's nice. Haven't done the art in here yet, and to my left I've got a Star Wars: A Force Awakens poster, nice. And then I've got the Guardians of the Galaxy foil that's got to go up, and then just over here there's a Aperture Science from Portal, because I'm 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be posting your NFT up on the wall anytime soon?
I probably will, actually. So it's funny you should mention that. I found a little 7-inch screen for the Raspberry Pi that can actually display at a fairly decent resolution. So I'm looking at making a little NFT display there.
And next time we visit, we'll just come and right-click on it.
That's right.
Right-click and save.
Save as. Did you just take a picture of that with your phone? Come on.
Yeah.
My favorite art.
$5. So, here's what I could do is I could actually have the NFT with an NFC download of a copy of it, right? But
excellent.
Could work.
My favorite artwork to post up is the default family photos you get with picture frames.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Just leave them in.
Those people are having so fun. Well, that's the other side of the family.
It's like on Sunday, photo. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, on Sunday I went over to Coquitlam where my friend Dermot lives, and he actually has he's got 2 gallery walls that our friend Candace has laid out for him, and it's just the stock photos that come in it, and it makes him look like a serial killer, which I think was the actual intent, and I just busted a gut laughing as soon as I walked in the door. So, Will, you were saying?
Well, one of my favorite sort of side hobbies or treasure hunts, whatever you want to call it, is there are a couple stock photo people, one in particular, who I see all over the place. I've seen her in Mexico. I've seen her in a Shoppers Drug Mart. Maybe I'll send you guys a photo. She's fairly famous. If you search Asian stock photo lady, it'll probably come up. She's, birthday cakes, jogging,
Nice.
with kids, all sorts of things. She was on a Mexican folk CD in a Mexican airport once. So yeah.
If you want to have some fun, you're bored, can't get to sleep late one night, just do a Google search for women laughing while eating salad, and there's a
Oh yeah, yep.
whole series of stock photos. There's a guy. I mean, I think he's collecting them on Tumblr site or something like that.
Yeah, it's
All
like the
right,
why
let's
can't
get
I hold
into
all
it.
these limes guy? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, since I know Will's got to be done right 8 of the dot, so he can go for a walk with his much better half. Let's get into it. Let's starting with good duck, bad duck, shall we? DuckDuckGo is a long time privacy-centric search engine that I've been using for a few years, and it does the job for me about 90% of the time. It's using Bing on the back end, but part of its promise is that it does not track you. It does have ads. It is ad powered, but unlike a Google, which has trackers all over the web because they have also, a large advertising network, just not with Google AdSense, but also through their DoubleClick display ad network and YouTube and all sorts of places. Google trackers everywhere. DuckDuckGo promises not to track you when you use their search engine. However, researchers have found in the last week or so that the DuckDuckGo web browser, which is a separate product, actually does allow a little bit of tracking, but only from one vendor. And that happens to be Microsoft, which is the purveyor of Bing, which is their core search engine that DuckDuckGo uses for their search engine. And so Bing, and then LinkedIn, which is also owned by Microsoft. And of course, DuckDuckGo being the privacy based search engine and web browser now are people are kind of having some issues with this because it kind of doesn't jive with their stated values. Now, their response is that, well, this was part of their arrangement with Microsoft as part of the Bing licensing deal, and they weren't necessarily allowed to talk about all those terms, but people are understandably concerned about the lack of transparency there. Now, Gray, I know that you're a long-time advocate of user privacy on the web, and I know that you use the Brave web browser. I've never used the DuckDuckGo one myself. I use them as a search engine, but I use Brave once in a while. What is your take on this? I mean, is it as malicious as people are saying, is as shady as people are trying to make it out to be?
No.
Or is this just kind of like a little bit of a misunderstanding, and they really should have done better, and what are the implications?
Yeah, this is like Apple slowing down the processor of your phone. It was kind of for your own good, but they should have said something. It's not malicious, right? And you can imagine that like the folks over at DuckDuckGo are very serious about privacy. So this really was in order to make this work on this particular platform with this browser, as opposed to with our search engine, we have to allow this to happen. But you can kind of tell from the tone of the statements, they're not happy about it. And I don't think they've ever been happy about it. So what should have happened, though, is just if somebody's using the search engine, we're getting the privacy that we expect. Downloading the browser should have had the warning that it now has on it. And that's just the simplest answer there. Really who this reflects badly on is Microsoft, right? Once again, expecting special treatment, and writing into their agreements that they get it. And it's really disappointing that, even when they don't have a monopoly, they tend to act like monopolists, and it's really, really tedious. And I wish they'd just get ahead of this kind of thing and do the right thing instead of doing what they're doing. So,
and it feels like, I mean, what the DuckDuckGo is saying is that, well, we maybe would have had this message, but we weren't allowed based on the contract. When we did this contract originally with Microsoft, we didn't actually have a web browser initially, so we were under the NDA terms of the contract and so on. But I think to your point, yeah, that would have been nice for that extra transparency, so people knew exactly where they're going into. Because I think most people would understand. So it's just way worse when it comes out this way because people feel betrayed ultimately.
Yeah.
All right. Will, no thoughts on this one? I said I wouldn't throw to you unless you actually had any specific thoughts, but here I am betraying you.
No, I mean, I have to admit, I've heard of the DuckDuckGo, but I don't use it. I've been interested in trying Brave. For a lot of what I do with web design, I'm still using either Chrome or Firefox. Firefox, I guess it was just a bad habit. It had a lot of plugins originally that I used to use. It still is a little bit more convenient for web design, so I still tend to use that. I try to use Chrome as little as possible just because of various cookie-related problems. So yeah, sometimes people make fun of me for still using Firefox, but it's just the one that I've always used for web design and things like that. So.
Anyone who gives you a hard time for the browser that you use needs to have their lunch money taken. That's yeah. Also, I shout out to the chat. We've got Diggs BTW7 from Twitch saying hello. So hello,
hello, Twitch. Diggs BTW say, hey, what's up? All right. Yeah, I like I said, DuckDuckGo is my main search engine. Safari is my main web browser. Come at me, but a lot of people are using Chrome. But like the Brave browser is run by it's Chromium, right? So the open source version of Chrome, great. And I'm not sure what DuckDuckGo uses. I don't know if anyone has that off the top of their head. But Firefox underwent a rewrite a number of years ago and was like so much faster after that, after becoming a big bloated mess. So I don't blame you at all for using Firefox. Well, that's it's perfectly acceptable. Although, some of us long for the days of Netscape Navigator 3.0.
Oh, my dad.
You know what I found the other day?
My dad would not use Microsoft for a long time because they killed Netscape Navigator. He kept on that way past its usefulness. It was ridiculous. It was like 2002. He was still using Netscape Navigator somehow.
I found my CD copy of the commemorative launch disc for Internet Explorer 4. Now with ActiveX. Yeah.
Now with the side of antitrust. All right, next up. Now, Will sent this to me a few days ago via Instagram because that's where he gets his news. And there's a lot of nerds that are getting excited because we've been teased for the last 7 years or so about the reincarnation of a DeLorean. But now we're getting some actual photos. There was a rear headlight shot teased last week. DeLorean is back in EV form with the Alpha 5 Sedan, of course, featuring the signature gull-wing doors. To be honest, doesn't have a ton of actual design cues from the original DeLorean, aside from the gull-wing doors. But it's going to be an EV as opposed to a mediocre gas engine, which the original DeLorean had. Will, what happened inside the cockles of your heart when you saw these photos?
Yeah, I don't think I'm alone here. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. I think I've mentioned this before. They are perfect movies for me, and there's something about that they only did 3 of them and that they wrap up very nicely. And besides some comic books and an animated show, which I have watched, come at me. So
it's a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show. I was a kid at the time, but
you got the train and Jules and Verne.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, it was about Jules and Verne. But I always wanted a DeLorean. They're super expensive. Do you know even toy DeLoreans are more expensive than regular cars? I just love the idea of an updated DeLorean. But again, the classic would be better. But that shot, I mean, come on now. That's just cool looking. So I love the idea of a new DeLorean. Obviously, it's got to be more than vaporware. We got to have a little bit more behind it. If it's an EV, that's fine. I'm thinking about getting an EV sometime in the future. So I'm all for it. But yeah, I just think that, obviously everything looks good in its resume. These shots look great, but we'll have to wait and see if it can walk the walk, because it can talk the talk so far.
Well, they're touting a range of over 300 miles and a 0 to 60 time of under 3 seconds. And to get to 88 miles per hour, it should only take about 4.35 seconds. So whether or not they're outfitted with a flux capacitor, I think it's a BYO FC, bring your own flux capacitor. So Will, you qualify since you've got your own. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Gray, there's a companion article that I included with this, and it has to do with EV vaporware. There's all sorts of EVs that are getting touted. There's, we had the revival of Fisker, which is coming. Rivian looks a little bit more real. Lucid is getting more real as time goes on. But there's still like this, at least a dozen or two other EV car makers, upstarts, and they're sharing some great renders. Do you think this DeLorean is actually going to be real after all this time, or how skeptical are you on a scale of 0 to 88?
I've got faith. This one feels real to me. I can't put my finger on why. I'm loving the design. Right, looking at that the one shot in the sort of bronze reddish in the previous article, it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of a Saab. Right, sort of that like set back, almost ready to pounce forwards feel. But yeah,
I was getting Lotus vibes a little bit, but yes, I could see Saab there too for sure.
Yeah. So you know what, we need some good news. So I'm gonna say I've got faith.
Look at the hips on that one. That's
right.
Yeah. I think it's going to be over 100 grand US. So it was at 128 grand, something like that I was seeing. So got to save our pennies. Maybe we could have a communal momentous DeLorean, and then we could take turns. Or you could make it back. If you drive for Uber or Lyft or something like that, you could probably.
It's funny because like some of the people that own like proper DeLoreans apparently can make quite a bit of money when they take them to conventions. I was at the Penny Arcade Expo, and I think it was like, I can't remember what the price was to get into it usually, but because they were launching the Back to the Future adventure game, I think they were allowing people to get a picture in front of it. I was there on behalf of Future Shop, I think, so the guy let me sit in the DeLorean, and I was very pleased.
So I think the point behind this other article is that it's, as we've seen with gadgets as well, is that it's easy to make renders, relatively speaking, but hardware is hard. And same goes for cars. Like, how long have we heard about the rumors of an Apple car, right? And we're talking, the most valuable company in the world seems to have problems getting it together to make a car. This is no small feat. And I think it just speaks to what a miracle Tesla is when all is said and done. But so I think I would just caution anyone about this or any other really whiz-bang, cool-looking EV out there that it's, if you get to put a deposit down, maybe make sure it's a reputable company, because I think just as many of these things are going to be going up in smoke as, or whatever the lithium-ion equivalent of smoke is, with some of these. So, but yeah, fingers crossed for the DeLorean Resurrection for sure, and we'll see. But yeah, hopefully it goes better than Matrix Resurrection. Well,
I liked it, but carry on.
It was fine. Kind of unnecessary.
So, yeah, it's okay.
But fine. Will, you've got another couple little things for us while we're on the Will Silver train here. We'll start with the software. I'm flipping them around you'll see why in a moment. But let's start with the software DJ Pro. And then AI at the end. What is this?
So I think I might have mentioned it before, and Gray, I think we've had a conversation. You've used it before or have partaked. It's got some cool features in terms of isolation, but the big thing is we have NAMM coming up this weekend, the first NAMM in person. So NAMM is sort of a music conference that goes on theoretically every year, except we haven't had one for a couple of years other than some online stuff. There's two NAMMs, I believe. Usually there's a winter NAMM and a summer NAMM. The winter NAMM is usually in LA, and the summer NAMM is like in Nashville and much smaller. The LA one is kind of the bigger one, if I'm not mistaken, at least from DJ World. And usually that's where the big devices or programs or updates are announced if they're really significant. This is kind of cool because this DJ software by DJ Pro by Algorithm, you can now use your phone as DVS software for your mixer that's DVS capable. So normally you'd have to use a laptop. So if you've been to a club or a restaurant or a bar or a bar mitzvah, you might have seen a DJ staring at a laptop with some sort of device underneath, whether it's turntables or a controller, which is sort of a big all-in-one unit. That's because they're using DVS software.
And DVS stands for, somehow it stands for digital vinyl control.
Yes.
How we went from an control to an S, but
there you go. There's this.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Gray, what is that you're showing us there, Gray?
So this is a Tractor Scratch disc. It's for digital vinyl. Will could probably explain it better, but basically, you've got two discs that become whatever song you've got playing in your deck, because essentially it is using this as a control system as opposed to actually just reading the music. So
they have a proprietary tone on them. So there's sort of two main companies that produce this tone. So Tractor and Serato. There's a few other ones like Record Box, but kind of the two biggest ones are Serato and Tractor. And that tone is interpreted by your computer and magically, whatever song you want, like Gray says, is played through because of this tone interacting with your computer. Now you can use your phone, no computer. Now, if you have seen, it's called laptop face, people staring at their laptop while they're DJing. Imagine if it's phone face. Now, having said that, if you're a DJ or if you're doing a small gig or even if you're just at home, it's nice not to have to set up your computer. You can just carry, some songs on the go and use this. I've not tried it out yet. I have tried DJ before, especially with their isolation software that they use. It was actually pretty good. It's not 100%, but it gets you most of the way there in terms of the isolation. By isolation, I mean you could separate the drums from the vocals and that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's some cool features. Gray, what would you say? I know you've tried that out or you've used it.
Yeah, I mean, it's far better than trying to EQ it down to just that one piece for a loop. So it really, being able to make stems on the fly is pretty awesome. And it works well enough, right? Like you've got a lot of other things that are going on when you're mixing. So if it's not pristine, as long if there's any trace of a beat, as long as that trace of the beat is in time, you're going to be fine. Right. Mm-hmm. And for them to actually bring this, because it's an open source tool that basically they've put a wrapper around that makes it easy for people to use. But the fact that it's in the software and can be used in real time is just ridiculous. Being able to now use your phone. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like the M1 and the A14 Bionic are ridiculously powerful. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see iPad more than phone for this application, but in a pinch, why not? And the machine learning has definitely been a game changer for the whole isolation side of things, right? As opposed to, like you said, Gray, having to EQ things to isolate those bits. You're getting a lot cleaner isolation of elements for doing your fancy mixing now for your fricka fresh.
Now, can I say fricka fresh? This is a fricka fresh price. It's now for the Pro version, Pro AI is $36.99 a year.
That's $36.99, I trust.
A year. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good.
So normally it's $9.50 a month. So they have cut their price significantly, I think, to promote this feature. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know. I haven't read the fine print. I'm probably going to, by the way, bad image resizing there. Yeah. Sorry, web designer can't stop.
Can't stop, don't stop, won't stop.
Exactly. suspect, if you read the fine print, that the price might go up in a year, but that's just me being Captain Cynical. But $36.99 is pretty good for an introductory price, so I might jump on that. I suspect that might be for this weekend or for a short period of time to try to get people on this new feature.
All right, so going from software to hardware, what is this other thing you sent along? We got this Pioneer DJM-S5 Scratch-style 2-channel DJ mixer in gloss red.
Yes, so this adds to the whole line of mixers that Pioneer has, and this is more of what you might call a budget mixer. This is for introductory market, but it has a couple really cool features. So one of the things is that it uses USB-C, and so you can actually power this with a power block. So if you're doing a rave in the woods, or you want to scratch in a park for some reason,
great, yeah.
this has USB-C, so you can power it without a generator. So I find that a really cool feature. There are a whole segment of people who like what's called portablism, which is taking small turntables and scratching, on the beach, or scratching in the woods or something like that, or going up a nice mountain on a nice hike and doing some scratching or some DJing. So this is really a kind of a cool feature for that. That to me is the major reason. Now, having said that, there are a bunch of cool features in here. If you're new to DJing and scratching, it's actually a pretty good price for what you get, bang for your buck. The top end mixers are about $2,700 Canadian. This one is about 800 US. So you're looking over a little bit over 1,000, so like half the price of say a Rain 72, or I know Tractor is quite reasonable. They haven't updated in a while. The Z2 is about $800. That's a great mixer. The S9 is $2,500, something like that, $2,300. So yeah, this is well priced at an introductory mixer, and is a very powerful piece of kit for what you get. So
just to be clear for those playing at home, that this sort of device is not the kind of thing you would use with the software that we were talking about just a minute ago. That is really, these are two different ways to go about mixing. One is more for straight up DJing. This is more for scratch DJing.
You could do mixing with this as well, for sure. Yeah. There's absolutely, can be mixing.
Yeah.
But some often scratch mixers can be mixing mixers.
Yep.
But mixing mixers often aren't scratch mixers, if that makes any sense. So yes, you could mix with this. You're probably not doing 4 channels or 3 channels. It's just a 2-channel mixer. Mm-hmm. Some more sort of, I don't know what you call it, festival or EDM type DJs might want something with more channels, like 3 or 4 channels. But yeah, so this is more stripped down, but you can definitely still, you see the bigger brother of this, the S9, you see it all the time in clubs and bars. They're very ubiquitous. Obviously controllers are very common these days, but you see a lot of these type of mixers in bars and clubs.
Well, this is a great example of something that is what one might refer to as a custom controller that can interact with your computer, because you're connected to your computer there. There's all these other devices we talked about, like Serato and Tractor devices and whatnot. And that's one of the coolest things in the last couple of decades, is all this combination of hardware and software working together to provide custom experiences as opposed to just using keyboard and mouse. So going from that very hyper specific niche, just want to zoom out a little bit to a couple of projects. One is something called Ploopy, which top marks for the name. Great name there. Some onomatopoeia there. They have an open source trackball project that has been going on for a while, and they have a website that features a number of trackball input devices for those who are into that. They've got a classic, they've got mini, the nano, and they also have a Ploopy mouse. But it's a whole kind of ecosystem that has grown up around this. it's almost like this homebrew sort of community as well. People can get the plans, and there's 3D printed parts and all that sort of thing. There's been a number of deep dives into this kind of niche. Now, my mom used to use a trackball on her like Windows 3.1 computer at work, and I'm more of a mouse fellow myself. I use a trackpad on the keyboard. Just real quick before we get into more specific things, but are you more trackpad, trackball, or mouse folks? Will?
Mouse.
Gray?
Actually, all three. So I don't know if you saw my tweet
simultaneously,
earlier this week, but yeah, actually. So I've got my trackpad here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my mouse here. But I actually posted a tweet earlier this week that Kensington had sent a bunch of trackballs to work, and so I've got a bunch to test. And I haven't used a trackball in years, and was really enjoying it.
So, now, what was it? Was it the precision that you enjoyed? Because that's one of the things about it. What was it specifically?
The precision, and I think just the ease on my wrist as well. Even with a trackpad, you find you're still repeating the same motions. So being able to break that up across 3 different devices, I'm digging in my bag here because I think I may have put the trackball in my bag. So,
ooh, accidentally on purpose.
I did not. No, it's mine. I don't steal the trackballs. I stole a chair. Very different.
There was and of course, the trackballs are kind of like an upside down mouse in a sense, where you got the traditional style mice that have a ball underneath. And there's these memes going around talking about how kids these days will never understand all the work we had to do to hard boil eggs and then take the yolks out and put them in to replace the balls in our mice.
It was getting the cruft out of the rollers was the hard part. Was like tweezers and a paperclip bent, and when laser mice came along,
mice, mice had the actual balls in them.
Yeah.
And we used to take them out and like hit them against the wall or something like that.
Oh yeah, they were usually rubber bouncy kind of balls.
Yeah.
They fit into some Nerf guns quite well, and it wasn't good.
Oh jeez. Wouldn't want to play with you in your neighborhood.
Put that in the temple.
When they sized up the Nerf, it actually got to a better place. So
yeah.
So as part of this sort of movement, we've also seen Microsoft and their adaptive controllers over the last 4 years or so, which has been kind of neat to see. Logitech getting in with their adaptive gaming kits, and but it just got me thinking about, some of these things come from an accessibility point of view for people for whom regular mice or trackpads or trackballs don't necessarily work. We're seeing Google and Microsoft and Apple really taking accessibility into consideration, and especially in their software design nowadays. There's even settings on the Apple Watch we talked about a few months ago where you can access different features of the watch just by tapping a single hand rather than using a finger to interact with the screen. So it's got me thinking about the different types of interactions that we have with our devices, whether they be computers or video games. And there's been an interesting variety of video game controllers over the years. So leading to that, there was this fellow who resurrected a Nintendo Power Glove and made it work with the Nintendo Switch. But then, even better, there's this version. What's this? Mario Kart Live, where you actually have a little toy car that you can drive around in the real world, and it's got a little camera on it. And he hacked his Nintendo Power Glove, which is from the like late 80s, early 90s kind of era. And
late
he's
80s,
driving around Mario on his Switch using this Power Glove. And I just thought that was one of the coolest hacks I'd ever seen.
Now he's playing with power. Superpower.
Oh, I see what you did there. So with that in mind, I just wanted to ask you, what were some of your favorite input controllers, be they for computers or for video games over the years? And Will, I know you've got one in mind, so we'll start with you.
This may be tenuous, but I'm going to show it anyways because it's the first one. And it's sort of video game related and not at the same time.
Okay.
So what I've got here is what's called the Midi Fighter.
Okay.
I got one of those.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So those have got arcade style buttons. They interact with various things. It's kind of homebrew by these guy called DJ Tech Tools. They have website. Obviously they still sell these. This is an older version. This is from like 2010 or something like that. It works off Tractor, works off Serato. Other people have hacked it for other various things.
And what's it called again?
It's called
the Midi Fighter.
Midi Fighter. Midi Fighter.
Midi Fighter. Okay, go on. Yeah.
Part of the reason for this is when you're triggering loops or other things, you know those MPC, like those big sort of beat machines, the pads on them, especially back in the old MPC days, it's they used to stick or they didn't trigger properly. They actually found that the best type of button for responsiveness was an arcade style button. So someone created this sort of chip, and they just basically put all these things on there and put in sort of custom software. It was a homebrew community. And so I still use it for various things, Ableton and Serato Studio, and also occasionally with Serato, although sometimes it doesn't work exactly how I want it to, but because I have pads on my mixers, so sometimes that creates interference. But for the most part, it actually, I have it on my desk right now because it works really well with my beat making software. So I actually use it for triggering samples off of various music related software.
Very cool. You know, the question I've always had about setups like that.
That's the newer one.
Ooh.
That's the newer one.
So go ahead, Gray, and I'll ask
well, I was going to say,
question.
like, in addition to the Midi Fighter, because they've got the Midi Fighter, this is the Midi Fighter 3D, right? Which is you can tap on the sides and you can like move things around like that. And then there's the Midi Fighter 64, which is what you're seeing right there. There's also the Midi Fighter Twister, which in place of having arcade buttons actually has like those pot style knobs that you get on a DJ mixer. And so that one's really, really slick. And it goes out of stock, and I keep meaning to buy it, and I never can kind of catch it where I've got the money I can justify spending on it. So I really want one because it basically you can I think Will said this, you can chain effects to each other and turn them all on and turn them all off with just a tap. It's an incredibly slick piece of software and an incredibly slick piece of hardware married together. DJ Tech Tools is phenomenal. They do great cables as well. And they actually, my DJ mixer, I got them to send, well, they sell these. They sell colored knobs for your mixer to personalize it. So mine is a creamsicle. I've got, white and orange instead of all the black knobs on it. It's because I'm 12.
Me too. I should show you my collection of DJ Tech Tool knobs. I have spent way too much money on it over the years.
They have a sticker pack that they send. It's on my other iPad case, but it's just a little heart with a set of headphones on it that says no requests.
Well, and these sort of things just speak to the sort of ingrained need for tactile control. The world is moving so far toward touchscreens, and I've ranted about touchscreens in cars, and the Tesla being like the platonic ideal of that, or the natural ridiculous conclusion where you want to turn your windshield wipers on and you got to like navigate some menu to turn that on. It's just like it gets, and even like gear shift controls and whatnot. It's frankly it's a little crazy making. We have hands and fingers, and we want to like I still drive with one hand on the gear shift, although I'm not shifting gears anymore.
Same.
So, well, like I said, I mean, one of the genesis from what I recall of this whole system of stuff was that the actual stock pads on many devices, particularly the MPC, didn't trigger properly or weren't triggering the way people wanted them to, and they just discovered that arcade buttons were designed and had been for many years to fire better than those pads, and we were stuck with those pads. So they were like, well, what if we just rip out those pads and put in arcade buttons?
Yeah, the pads can be a little mushy in feel too, whereas the arcade one's more clicky and responsive in that sense.
And so, depending on how you got it set in software, it either triggers on press down or on release. Right. And that to me is just a, when you don't have that nice click down or click up for release, it's just, anyway.
So my question about these sorts of devices, given that they seem to be anywhere from 4x4 to 8x8, that's a whole lot of thing. And with no obvious labeling scheme, how are you keeping all that in your head for what you've programmed each of those buttons or knobs to do?
Well, I originally, back in the day, actually designed the buttons.
Okay.
So these were actually, sorry, it's backwards. This was actually like stop. This was like go.
Oh,
this was bank.
Nice.
Or sorry, this was bank. And then the rest of these were bank buttons. So I actually customized the color of the buttons back in the day. This was Gen 1 or Gen 2. I think it might have been Gen 2. The one that Graham has is much more sophisticated than mine. It's a number of years older. Mine was from like 2010 or 2011, I think. Still works fine. I mean, it's just arcade buttons and a software board, so it still works. But Graham's is much more sophisticated. It's got the touch and all that kind of stuff.
I think I can show you as well how you can kind of keep things straight on this. Let's see here.
I think yours has lights, doesn't it?
It does. Don't split this rise.
What are we looking at?
Let's see if it'll actually light up. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it needs software in there, or maybe it's toasted. But basically, it's got LEDs underneath all of the buttons. And so those, basically, as you're programming it in, you can set those colors, you can set the patterns, and so it tells you what it is that it's doing. Right now, it's doing jack squat.
Nice. All right, so we're going to go from one extreme to the other in terms of
what do you got?
Favorite interfaces here. And this may be a function of my advanced age. One of my favorite input devices over the years has been the USB PowerMate. It is a single.
I love that. I have one of those.
Machined aluminum PowerMate UB, and it's got a great feel. You can click down and twist. So, if you want a volume control, I've used it in the past for video editing, for moving the playhead on a timeline. It's been really nice for that. This is the older USB version. Actually, friend of the show, Jerome, got me a Bluetooth version of that, which is the newer one, a wireless, very cool. And again, one of the best features is that the light up would have a nice blue glow to it. But so, you got someone like me asking, how do you remember all those things? Well, with one button, hopefully it's a lot easier to remember.
I had one of those and I loved it.
I wanted to. One thing at a time.
I used to use that for video editing. I don't know, in various moves, mine is somewhere in a box somewhere, but I used to love it.
I don't think they make the USB one anymore, but again, it's just like, it was really nice. It had just enough resistance on it. It had that feel. It kind of reminded me of the feel of the knobs on old 70s stereo amplifiers, right? So again, that weird tactile need that some of us have. All right, moving on. Speaking of, what, you got something else for us?
Well, that's what the lights look like. So when you turn it on, it gives you that little. Oh, there you go.
Is there a trigger warning before you start playing with it that contains flashing lights?
No, it's survival of the fittest at that point.
Perfect.
There's a great little app that I was using for this that would teach you how to finger drum and other things.
Oh, cool.
I'll try to remember it by the end of this episode, but still. It was
cool.
Like
those advanced Tetris players do for their controllers use.
Yeah. I couldn't actually. I had to give up my subscription in the old place because it was basically a giant cathedral, and so me tapping on arcade buttons, I think I could actually hear Ray's eyebrow raise, and just the scrape of the knife as it came out of the block. I'm like, I should probably stop. Yeah. This could be the end.
Their teeth were gritted down to nubs.
Yeah. It was not a pleasant sound. Like I will admit, it was not a pleasant sound. So,
all right, moving on to a different type of input here. Evercade's latest retro handheld includes a dedicated mode for vertical shoot 'em ups.
I don't get to talk about mine.
Oh, you already. Oh, I thought you did. Sorry. Oh, look, go on. I thought you were. Oh, please go on.
No, I was just going to say. So the Logitech G13
Oh, here we go.
It's cool.
Looks like a-
So basically, these are all fully programmable buttons. You got a little joystick down there on the bottom. This was great for StarCraft for moving the map around. Really, really neat. It's great for Destiny because you've got tons of power, so you can kind of like program these in with macros. That's awesome. But
and that's Logitech G13, you said?
Yeah, I think they've got newer versions out. Razer's got one as well. There's a bunch of different versions, but basically it's like a half-size keyboard that just is for WASD and stuff around it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was probably 11 years old, and I think TIE Fighter had just come out. LucasArts had released X-Wing many years before, and then TIE Fighter was like the cooler sibling. It had a great storyline. There was, you could become a secret agent of the Empire. But my next door neighbor, Rob, worked for the RCMP. His brother actually works for the VPD, twin brother, which is a weird thing to see them both in uniform. But he knew that I loved this game, and I had this ridiculously horrible joystick. And so he gave me his older one, because I think he wanted the new one. And it is the CH flight stick.
Oh,
CH flight
that's
stick.
dope.
Let's see that.
Yeah, and
wow.
This thing is legit. Like it is a great joystick for flying. I downloaded the Microsoft Xbox or Windows Game Pass not too long back and downloaded Flight Sim and had a blast with that. I've got pedals and rudder and everything else there, but this is where it's at. So those were my two.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that was a lot of our first experience with custom controls with yokes like that for playing games. Or you remember the Empire Strikes? Was it the Empire Strikes Back arcade game that had the yoke, the dual hand yoke on there? That was very cool as well. So this is the Flight Stick, or is it the Flight Stick Pro? It looks like there's been a couple different versions over the years.
I had the Flight Stick. This is the Fighterstick USB.
Oh, Fighterstick USB. Okay.
Yeah.
So
warranty
we'll
void of seal is broken.
In the show notes.
For home or office use. No industrial joysticking.
Yeah.
You're flying a drone for the US
I hear it's
Army?
great for Microsoft. I hear it's great for Microsoft Excel. Sorry, what?
Right.
For that office use.
You joke, but this actually is. So.
All right. Let's move on to, here we are. Finally, the Evercade's latest retro handheld. So Evercade is maker of various retro systems. Their angle was they were using little cartridges with collections of games on them as a legal way for people to be able to enjoy some retro games. But they have a handheld here. Looks, it's not entirely dissimilar from what's the was it the Steam Deck? Is that the one that just came out a few months ago?
It's a little Steam Deck, little Nintendo Switch.
Little switchy, but one of the key innovations here with the EXP is that apparently you can use it vertically. So
nice.
You can Game Boy style mode or analog pocket mode there too. Now, I've heard of Evercade before, and I'm just wondering, is there enough room in the market, given that we've got the analog pocket, we've got even niche devices like the Playdate and the like? Is there room for yet another player in this retro handheld market? Because you can also play retro games on the Switch too, of course. Things getting too saturated? Are we going to see some consolidation or some fallout here? What's your take on this, Greg?
No, I don't think so. Looking at this, I think that there is these products emerge because a need is not being satiated. And looking at the retro market and being able to take older, because I imagine, like, where's the software for this coming from? They're ROMs, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, they've got cartridges that they sell in packs, right?
Yeah.
So I assume that they're licensing them. Yeah.
Well, if they're licensing, that's great. So, yeah. I mean, looking at it, Nintendo has just rolled off their store for a bunch of their different consoles.
Yeah.
And so
you're not going to get Nintendo games on something like this, obviously. it's going to be a
And
lot of
and
other
the
stuff.
actual the digital download thing is a bit of a pain in the ass. This having the cartridges that have all the games on it, I think that's a great choice. So yeah, I mean this is actually addressing a need that nobody else is really hitting right now, and it looks, this is for the guys and girls who were the age when these things came out, who now are old enough to want sleek and sexy things. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If I had any space in my life for it, I would buy one, but I don't. So I'll borrow yours.
So it looks like they've got over 300 games in their library, and it does scratch that itch for people who like to have physical media. And they showed there all the boxes, the retro style boxes with the little cartridges inside. And the cartridge reminds me of like Game Boy cartridges there. Will, do you prefer to have game media like digitally, or do you like the idea of being able to buy cartridges with these collections of games, be they Atari games or Capcom games or Intellivision games and the like that they've got here, like anything that's basically not Nintendo?
I like having cartridges. I like having physical media. I think you and I share that with CDs or DVDs or HD DVDs.
It's here to resell too.
Yeah, Blu-ray, what have you. I like it. I will also say, Gray brought up ROMs, and I've played some retro devices, arcade cabinets, and other homebrew type stuff with ROMs. The problem with ROMs is that they're not always exported properly. They're not always, and it's hard to have universal controls. It's basically open source. You don't know how well they are. Sometimes they just crash. Sometimes the buttons don't work properly. Sometimes you have no idea how to even control the game. You got to figure that out. It may be designed for 6 buttons or 2 buttons or 1 button or 2 sticks or 1 stick.
I have one button.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it, as much as this sounds like I'm the man or something like that, I'd like to have something that's actually legit, that's been exported, that people put time into, and that I have to spend money on. I'd rather spend money on something that's done right, than just download 100 ROMs and maybe 20 of them are playable or decent. So I have done that. I have played ROMs. Trust me, I'd much rather pay for it. And I know that's not a popular point of view, but I also believe in paying the artist. So
it is now that we've got to this age, right?
Yeah.
Now that we're no longer struggling to pay rent.
Yes.
So
yeah,
sure.
Let's see how the economy goes in the next year or two. Watch those when we had time to renew our mortgages.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about money right now. That's all I'm going to say. So I have my own issues.
Let's continue to talk about retro games there. There were some recent inductees into the Video Game Hall of Fame, including Ms. Pac-Man, Dance Dance Revolution, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Sid Meier's Civilization. So I think we can agree that those games all deserve a spot in the World Video Game Hall of Fame. I also shared in the show notes with y'all the list of past winners, and I thought, just for a quick discussion, what in your opinion is missing? Is obviously maybe a game that you've enjoyed over the decades, and not just a game that you like. I want to know why. Why do you think a certain game that you think would be significant enough to merit a spot in the World Video Game Hall of Fame but it's not there now? So, Will, I know that something came to mind for you pretty quickly. So let's start with you.
I have a huge list. So maybe I'll do one and we can go back. But
you've got less than 6 minutes. So
yeah, I have less than 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the one that stands out for me more than any, and I know this is somewhat of a new Hall of Fame. I will say right now it's not a very good Hall of Fame. There's a lot missing here.
It's been going only for 7 years, and they only do a handful per year. So, yeah.
The number one for me that deserves to be on is Super Mario 64. That game absolutely blew open world sort of platforming and did it amazing. I mean, the graphics are a little old now, but the playability, the depth, the secrets, the collecting is still second to none. The other one, quickly, I'll just drop the one that I went ooh-ah when we were talking pre-show was Pitfall. I can't believe Pitfall's not on there, but Pitfall also in many ways, just tying into this, side-scrolling, blue open side-scrolling was like the most impactful third-party game for the Atari when it came out. It blew open third-party, which, you know, later on killed Atari, but third-party video game manufacturing just rewrote the book on that. The whole Activision story, a bunch of people broke off from Atari, created their own company because they wanted the actual video game designers to have more of a say and more money, not just be employees of a company. It was completely revolutionary. It was the first sort of, I think, first big hit of Activision, but also just blew open side scrolling, and a lot of things followed this model. So that one absolutely for me, Super Mario 64. I have a whole list of other things, but I'll leave some for you guys. So,
quick Super Mario 64 story. I got a chance to play that. I believe it was in the summer of 1997 at the PNE. They had a tent there, and Nintendo had a little bit of an exhibition, and it was like the Japanese version of the game that they were showing off before. This was before the release of the Nintendo 64, and I think that was, we had gone for my birthday, and I had gastroenteritis, so I was clenching pretty hard that entire time. Yeah, we'd gone to Denny's for breakfast. It was just like popping Imodiums and whatnot. But I do indeed remember playing Super Mario 64, and that was a lot of fun.
Many years, a reoccurring nightmare. This is not a joke. A reoccurring nightmare was me swimming as Mario up from the ocean and running out of breath as the sea monster was chasing me in the pirate sunken ship level. That I am not making that up. For like 10 years. That was my dream. That my recurring nightmare was me as Super Mario swimming up and the sea monster chasing me.
That's when you realize you go to get some help about it, and you go to see your therapist, and you're like, Dr. Bowser.
Yeah. I used to go to Dr. Mario, but he hasn't been around for a while.
He is not a real doctor.
He's not a real doctor.
Gray, what's your pick?
Well, yeah, I just up there, and that is Leisure Suit Larry. This is the adult-themed video game series created by Al Lowe from 1987 to 2009. And I believe the first one was Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards, and then it was followed up by Leisure Suit Larry Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. This game was hilarious. And it had an age restriction mechanism put in, which was just asking you trivia questions that kids shouldn't know. And you know, you've met me. I have a bit of an old soul to begin with, and I've got just a penchant for trivia, so I was able to like scream through those, no problem. Fantastic.
Who is the
game.
publisher of Penthouse Magazine? I'm Guccione.
That got shot.
That was Larry Flint. That was Hustler. We know all our founders.
Yeah, I know. It was interesting because this is actually one of the few games where you can die close to the end of the game if you do have sex with a sex worker and you don't use a condom. You just keel over right on the spot. This feels a bit like the drug panic and the satanic panic of the 80s, but you know,
yeah.
So that's really solid. Another one that I would think would fit in well here would be Another World, which was a 1991 video game, and it used vectorized graphics. It was an adventure game, kind of a platforming game, kind of. There wasn't a whole lot of exposition or explication that went on. Basically, you were playing this character Lester, who after a science experiment ended up on an alien world. And if you were like me, you died a lot in the first couple of screens.
I love that.
So this looks like Prince of Persia from what I can see. That's Another World there.
Yeah. I have to confess, I have never even heard of this.
That's a great game.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
So it was, I think it was Encom that made it, and it was followed up by a game called Flashback. But both games were phenomenal, and
Flashback was great.
So Another World, was that what platforms was that on?
That was on PC. I want to say Sega had a copy of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Flashback was definitely on Sega. I played that on the Genesis.
Yeah.
So speaking of vector graphics, my pick It was an arcade game that you may be familiar with, and it wasn't the first vector graphics game, but it was early-ish, and that was Battlezone.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, we had vector graphics games such as I think Space War and Asteroids, and I think after this was Tempest, which is really cool. It had the rotary controller. But what was neat about Battlezone is it was one of the earliest 3D kind of world things. It was very primitive. You could never get to the mountains.
Yes.
And but there was obstacles. There's other tanks firing at you and the like. And
It's a bit of a metaphor for life.
Exactly.
You can never get to the mountains, and there are tanks firing at you.
It had the dual stick control, so it's like you're driving an actual. I mean, I've never driven a tank before, but so great input method. We've been talking about input methods today as well. And the sound when you could hear when some of the other kinds of ships were coming for you. There was also like UFOs and other things that would buzz you, and like it was stressful. I remember playing this on the ferry, but it was very cool. And you're always trying to get to those mountains. But anyway, so that's my pick there. A big fan of vector graphics because they're just so different from our traditional raster graphics, and it was just green and kind of scary. So
can I give a few others that aren't on this list?
Well, it's
No.
803, 802, Will. So let's save it for next time. Because
damn it! I have
we're
a
trying to
whole
keep your
list.
marriage.
You can,
And
you can
what?
bring us
We've got
the
other
list next time.
stories. We've got other stories and trailers that we need. We're going to have to skip as well. So let's just skip right to our picks. Will, your pick of the week.
My pick of the week is Chippendale's Rescue Rangers by sort of the comedy team behind Lonely Island. Directors, one of the members of Lonely Island. It's got Andy Samberg in it. It is, I think, hilarious. I think the other thing that's, to me, really interesting is this is like the modern day Roger Rabbit. This is what Roger Rabbit was to animation being brought into real world. This is a lot of commentary on 3D animation and 2D animation and modern sort of movies, and the sort of dilemma my wife often jokes about, the Lion King live action. That's not live action. That's just a different type of animation. So there's sort of a bit of commentary on that, and a bit of commentary on Hollywood and various things. So I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I full disclosure, I did like the Rescue Rangers as a kid, but I don't think you have to. I think, again, Andy Samberg and the whole team that's involved in this, I mean, comedy gold here. I really do highly recommend it, even if you're not a fan of the original Rescue Rangers.
So is it appropriate for both? So obviously it's good for grown-ups, but it's good for kids too, I trust?
Maybe more for adults. There are some mature themes here and some scary stuff. I wouldn't say young children, let me put it that way. And it kind of makes fun of some of those reboots like Alvin and the Chipmunks and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more adult.
Yeah, but who trusts their kids?
Yeah,
yeah.
All right, good pick. How about you, Gray?
Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know you've got that in there.
Yeah.
Those first two episodes, it just, I mean, the way that it slots in so perfectly, like it's a puzzle piece that is connecting to Clone Wars, it's connecting to the prequels, it's connecting to Rebels, it's connecting to Rogue One. Like, it's just, they have done such a masterful job. And I mean, it comes down to Ewan McGregor's skill as an actor as well. Like, just, you believe.
Just look at him.
It's fascinating. I find this. I have to read this article because that headline, Obi-Wan Kenobi could be the last hope for Star Wars under Disney. It's like, I'm sorry, did you miss The Mandalorian?
Yeah,
I even like the Book of Boba Fett, so I don't quite know what they're getting at with that. But it's CNET, you
got to have a little bit of clickbait there. I think what's an interesting side effect of this. And this could be also a question of generations hitting a certain age, is that you notice how the prequels, episodes 1, 2, and 3, they're actually almost being redeemed a little bit nowadays.
Yes.
Like, given that the mixed reaction to 7, 8, and 9, people are looking back at 1, 2, and 3 and going, maybe they weren't all that bad after all. I mean, maybe there's a few too many Senate proceedings in episode 1, and maybe
And
too
Jar
many
Jar.
stupid CGI fights and in episode 2. But episode 3, it got darker and got cool to see how Anakin becomes Darth Vader. It's like, wow, that was kind of neat.
I agree.
So
I like the
here's the thing.
prequels.
Yeah.
They, you know what? I like them too. They're objectively bad. They're objectively bad.
That's why we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, to make us think that maybe they weren't that bad. Because look, this is the same actor playing Obi-Wan, so how bad could they be?
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, only a Sith speaks in absolutes, so what up? But they were bad, right? Because of how he had to shoot things with CG. That's why everyone had to walk slowly, because they couldn't render that in behind, and that's fine. That's okay. But the dialogue was clunky. The story was ridiculous. Like a trade federation, and I'm like, what even? You know, did it need to start with him as a kid? Probably not. But you know, George just had his idea what this was, and so there's no redeeming them. They're bad. I still like them, but they're bad. But what there is the ability to do is to bake the fluffy cake around this particular turd, and that is what they are doing.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
I have no idea.
Recontextualizing them. Yeah,
I
have
see
no
what
idea
you're
how they're
saying.
going to fix.
I hear what you're saying. I respectfully disagree. I think there's redeeming factors in each one of them. Yes, the love interest in the second one is horrible. There's a bunch of problems with them. But you know, there are also probably the best music in all of Star Wars is in episode 1 with the was it Duel of the Fates? That is objectively the best song in all of Star Wars, maybe closely behind Darth Vader's theme. But I think that's the best one.
Imperial theme beats it out for me, right? Like
it's a close call, but regardless, it's in the conversation.
But here's the thing. These are
we need them
factors. Because I think what Tristan was trying to say is like they feel like they are being redeemed now by the surrounding material, and they're not.
It's almost
it's almost
like as if Obi-Wan is our only hope.
That shiny silver ship that Amidala tooled around him, awesome, right?
Yes.
The movie's still shit.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is it
Mandalorian season 2? That ship
it's still better than most sci-fi that was put out at that time. I mean, that's the thing is like our expectations were very high, and so yes, there's problems with them. They're not perfect. Jar Jar is a joke, and there's racial stereotypes. But no, I enjoy them. I refuse to say they're bad because I don't think they're bad. But at the same time, to the point, Dave Filoni is putting them all together in terms of he's bringing in Clone Wars, he's bringing in other things. So we can argue about whether they're good or bad. And I'm not saying there aren't shitty parts of those movies.
We already did.
We
lost.
No. There are shitty parts, but I still think they're good movies overall. No, I disagree. It's all a matter of perspective. I think people pack on those movies, and this is part of the point of what Tristan was saying. Can you stop interrupting me, and can I say things, or are you just going to cut me off all the time? Honestly, Greg.
I'm kidding. So please continue.
Yeah. So I mean, you can say there's bad parts of the movie. I have fully admitted that from the very beginning. I still think they're good. It's a matter of opinion. And what Tristan is trying to say is the newer generation doesn't have some of these things built around about being all this built up from childhood and anticipating these for 20 years. They're looking at them objectively. You can say they're objectively bad, and there are some really bad parts of them. Jar Jar is horrible. Racial stereotypes are horrible. Some of the dialogue is just atrocious in the second one in episode 2. But there are redeeming parts in every one of those movies, right? Like some people hate the pod race. I love the pod race. You could say the ship is great. I like the ship. That's good. There's lots of good parts in all of those movies. So if you take a look compared to other sci-fi, I don't think it's nearly as bad as some things that I've sat through. So I think if you take a step back, they're not that bad.
If I may, what I would like to propose to you is that you don't actually think that these films are good. You think they're enjoyable, which I agree with you. These are enjoyable, but there is, I think, a litmus test of what makes good cinema. And the slow-moving shots kill it. The dialogue, kill it. Now, that doesn't make it less enjoyable. It just takes it below the barrier of good. George could have done so many different things here, and he did not. So it's okay for these to be bad. Army of Darkness is bad, and I fucking love it. Pardon my French. So, but that's what I'm saying is they make us feel good, but they are not the standard for good. Worse yet is how the sequel trilogy was handled. And I have no idea what Dave is going to do there, because that is a gulf I have no idea how they cross.
But I mean, I would say that for a lot of movies, people that say are good movies, I'd say a lot of the Lord of the Rings movies aren't that great. There's a bunch of the Hobbit movies that are atrocious. So if you want to start talking about it being a good movie, or like being a movie that I like, or I would call a good movie, whether it's Oscar worthy, even though the Lord of the Rings won an Oscar, I think you could have a lot of conversations about movies that people call good. So that also does get into objectivity about whether it's Siskel and Ebert good, or whether it's, I mean, I love Regal Steel. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. That is not a great movie. I get that. I get the not being a good movie thing, and I hear what you're saying. So I just think people like to shit on those movies. I think there's a lot of good parts about them. So sorry, we are friends, and we are just having an open discussion. And I realize that it's a popular opinion to hate those movies, but I'm not one of those people. So
see, I don't hate them. I like them.
Yeah,
I just don't think they're good.
So fair enough.
So I think one of the things that, in terms of the recontextualizing and the maybe established appreciation for those movies, is that the generation that came of age while those were being released, the people that are in there, getting into their 20s and 30s now, and they're like, they have a certain fondness for them, like we had a fondness for the original trilogy.
Yes.
So even though one could argue about the merits of the original trilogy as well, we think they're objectively good. Whereas Star Wars, the first one, the reviews weren't that great when it came out. So are they objectively good or simply subjectively good, etc.? Right. So
that generation had Clone Wars and Rebels, helmed by Dave Filoni, with the expressed mission of fixing the perception of these, and actually fixing the canon around them, because George rushed it, and that's why he gave Dave this mission: go fill in the gaps. And here's the thing: with those gaps filled in, there's nuance there, right? The films themselves aren't necessarily redeemed, but the media piece, when you factor those in, suddenly starts to make a whole lot more sense. And so that generation has the benefit of probably one of the greatest storytellers of the 21st century doing that work to make these things work again.
Well, our generation had the Star Wars holiday special to fill in those gaps. So.
and Ewoks.
Speaking of objectively good or bad.
I don't know if you've gone back and watched the Ewok specials. Oh, they're so bad. And the Ewoks animated cartoon that I actually had positive feelings about, and I went back and watched some of it when it came on Disney Plus.
The Droids cartoon? There's a reason I go by 3PO. It's because of that cartoon.
Yeah. All right. One thing that I hope once you guys see it that we can all agree on, that is that the latest from Alex Garland, the creator of Ex Machina and Annihilation, and writer of The Beach and Annihilation, and the novels before that, that his latest Men is just objectively effed up. So themes of original sin, perhaps mythology, like the Green Man, the dynamic between the sexes. It's called Men for a reason. And there's a woman dealing with trauma, and she goes to get away. She rents a nice place in the English countryside, and to relax, do a little bit of work. She's got Wi-Fi there, and then hilarity ensues. And by hilarity, I mean like, what am I even watching? So that's Men by Alex Garland. That is my pick of the week. Hopefully non-controversial, but it's definitely not for kids.
Theaters are streaming.
I saw it in the theater, but could be streaming. I don't know. We'll hit the button and we'll find out.
Awesome.
It's probably streaming soon. If not, I'm not sure what Alex Garland's thoughts are on that. It's on A24, which is a great studio. So, but weird, especially the third act. It just goes off the rails. Anyway, that is my pick of the week. Quick project. Will, this was over a month ago now. You didn't get a chance to share it with us because you had to step away for a little bit. What is cut?
It's one of my latest loopers, very well received. It's kind of a weird mishmash of things, kind of 80s techno, 80s electro, hip hop, a bunch of sort of things put together. Very sort of, I don't know, a lot of melodic voices in the background and hard driving drums. So people seem to really like it. I'm actually really happy with the reaction. Sometimes I put stuff out and I think, I think I like this. I don't think anyone else is going to like this, but I'm going to put it out anyways. And so people actually have sort of liked this quite a bit. Again, I know you like to point out the funny titles. There's a few of my favorite titles here. Dance Off Bro, which is a reference to Guardians of the Galaxy. That's probably one of my favorite titles. Low Hung Fruit, I think, is one of those mixed suggestive / mixed metaphors. So two of my favorite titles. But yeah, there you go.
And I've checked them out, and I quite enjoyed. It's one of my favorite sets, actually. Also, Cocaine Coma. Gotta love that title.
That's the one that got me. Yep, fantastic.
Speaking from experience, I trust Will. And of course, the lovely and talented Tasia Custodi, who's not with us this week, has yet another video in the Google universe. This one on Gmail tips. There is a new Gmail layout here in 2022, being rolled out first to those who pay for Gmail services, and I believe it is being rolled out to other non-paying people eventually as well. And she describes in the video how you can go and access the settings to try and access the new Gmail layout. Gray, have you turned on the new Gmail layout for your account yet?
No.
All right. That's a good Will Silver answer there.
I access it through OS 10 Mail and through Mail on the, so I don't.
Yeah. I hear
you. You know when I do use it is when OS 10 Mail won't find mail, so I just go and jump into Gmail, do the search, find the actual piece of mail. No idea why that doesn't work, but yeah. So I'll go take a look, but maybe I should watch.
And you can find Tasia's videos at youtube.com/Tasia Custodi and www.tasiacustodi.com. Gray, any projects to share with us this week?
I'm actually just kind of building my streaming setup here because I want to start streaming some Destiny and some video games and that kind of thing. So that's stay tuned.
Will you be sharing that on your Twitch?
I will be sharing that on my Twitch. So if you're watching this on Twitch right now, there will be some Destiny coming up.
That'd be awesome.
There we go.
Nice. And you can find out more about us at momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv, and on YouTube, search my name, and you can find various Momentous playlists there. Will, great to have you back. Gray, good to see you. As always, to you and from us to everyone else, we hope your week is truly momentous.